down the river. But you know what? Let's find out if that's what we're heading towards here. It's going to be Hillendale, Marlians versus Chinese. Are we going to still get the good old Farimba rush, or has VortiX got something new to show?
Wow, have a look at that spawn for Beasty. That wood line on the east side of the map.
Oh,
Gonna make it very easy for him to wall up right there.
no. I mean, now keep in mind that the trade posts have been altered, right? Because I believe Hillendale used to be the corner, which was easy peasy. Now, if we did want to look at Marlian trade down the line, I wouldn't expect the Chinese to get into it, but the Marlians, you have to have mid-map control here, which could be quite difficult.
Yeah, yeah, very very glad that the markets aren't in the corner here.
Yeah, I think
was,
some people are very
issue.
glad when markets don't exist at all at this point.
Yeah.
So let's kind of theory craft how the opening should go here, because we mentioned a little bit as Chiganu for an option. We have been seeing a lot of fast castle out of the Chinese. I think it's quite easy to get kind of like a 8-minute timing, especially if you get close deer spawn maps like Hillendale. Do you think that could work quite well to kind of solve the Marlian issue here?
It could be, but I think if Beastie looks to go Castle Age himself, and I mean, in saying that, Palace Guard aren't the best anymore, as well as Knights, because of the changes to the Muso Fadi. I mean, they're better at countering those heavy units. But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting one here.
It is possible you just see your old tried and true me like TCs, me build TCs Chinese. Definitely a playstyle BC's very comfortable with, right? You know, I've talked to him. BC kind of gets a bad rap as this guy who, I don't know, has a fetish for the late game, right? Like, you say 50 minutes and the hairs on the back of his neck go up and he just lets out an enthusiastic noise. That's actually not Beastie in a nutshell. The way you can describe Beastie correctly, and I talked to him and I agree on this, if you give him an opportunity to end the game early, he will take it. But if he feels like you're dragging your heels, like you're a little bit hesitant, he's not going to deny an opportunity at a stronger time later in the game where he knows he can thrive. And admittedly, a map like Hillendale with a Civ like Chinese might not be as much VortiX giving him the opportunity as him wanting to seize it.
Saharan Trade Network coming through for VortiX. Very interesting choice right there. What do you think about that?
I'm wondering why. Like, you're not going to get raided that early. Like, the obvious answer to why is trade, right? But
It's hard though on this map.
yeah, like, do you not want Manta Quarry? Would it not be nice to have 2 villages extra worth of production each minute?
Yeah. Interesting choice by VortiX. We're gonna have to see, because trade here is really hard on this map where the markets are in the center of the map. And when Beastie spots this, I'm sure he'll be sending some villagers out to start to wall up those markets, or at least tower them.
I mean, typically, like, we would see this opening if you're up against, say, a Mongol player. Anyone who's going to aggro you early because you're paranoid, you're going to be harassed. But I remember talking to a few players, like, a lot of the time they're like, I just don't see the point in this landmark if that's your goal, that you're worried you're going to be raided. Just build an outpost instead, maybe. Maybe it's just more efficient. Or I think the part that drives them nuts is when players build the trade network right next to the gold vein, which, of course, means that you get less passive gold out of the pit mine. In this case, VortiX has done the right thing. He's pulled it away from the gold vein, so he's not missing out on additional housing.
Beastie going to be going for a forward Barbican here. Nice positioning right there.
Skews the berries, but it's more about control over the choke point. Like, if you check from south to north, you're always going to be in range of the Barbican if you now try to move past it. Speaking of which, VortiX comes in early enough that he doesn't have to worry about a shotgun to the face.
VortiX going to be researching warrior scouts right there.
Oh. Well, hello.
It could be an interesting move from VortiX. Does he look to go into professional scouts behind this, possibly?
I was wondering if that's going to happen here, because I remember when the Marlins got released, and I kind of looked at it, I was like, this actually might be the most viable civ at going pro scouts, right? Like, you know, you just have these more tanky scouts that attack back better, also move faster, right? Which means the movement speed mouse impacts them less compared to other scouts. So it's usually kind of a given that you can easily get your hands on 3 stacks of deer worth. Obviously, the 4th one would be a little bit difficult here for VortiX to yoink, but if you look at the backside, BC hasn't even actually targeted down the deer yet. So if VortiX does go for kind of like a pro scouts play, long term, he might actually manage to get all stacks of deer on this map. Oh,
Yeah.
oh no, no. Oh, that's the worst possible timing.
Yeah. This is such an interesting move from VortiX.
It's like, hey, bro, what you doing there? Just building what's the same size as building a blacksmith back here. Why are you building a blacksmith back there? That's a weird looking blacksmith. Doesn't look like you're trading arms. It's like you're trading goods. Yeah, it's definitely a blacksmith, Beastie. Just don't look at this again, please.
VortiX, it looks like he's been training up some sofas. So he did grab warrior scouts, but hasn't actually trained any scouts.
So the Warrior Scout, like, I don't think it's that expensive a tech, right? So even for just the 1 scout, if you want to use him aggro, maybe it's kind of worth.
Yeah, I mean, we have had a buff to warrior scouts. They now heal 2 HP per second in the feudal age.
And the cost is only 50 resources, 15 food, and I think it's 35 gold. So
Yeah,
it's not bad if you think about it. Even for just 1 scout, considering it takes them up to, I believe it's like 8 damage. Although, you know, maybe not against Spit. Yeah, just get out of here. I think it also brings them up to the same movement speed as the Sofa, if I recall correctly.
yeah.
Yeah.
Movement speed does increase a little bit, which is always nice.
So he's going to keep Beastie dancing. Doesn't mean Beastie has to expend resources into spears. But those spears can be used elsewhere eventually. So that's something that VortiX needs to be careful of. This can turn into a shutdown of the raid. And that's why you now see him setting up archery ranges as well.
VortiX going very, very greedy here on the market. He's gone for 2 markets on that eastern neutral market. Going to be managing to get away there with that sofa.
Yeah, but that's not healing, right? So, like, this Sofa investment has been pretty worthless. It hasn't done anything for VortiX so far.
Yeah. Traders starting to... Looks like they're taking a long route.
Okay, this I love to see. This is a rarity. Like, what is the standard thing when it comes to Chinese people and their TC placements, Merlin? Right? They're trying to build a super TC on one screen, right? Put all of them next to each other. But Beastie understands that with the choice to go trade from VortiX and the fact he's already countered cavalry spears, he can get away with what could be seen as an insanely greedy TC placement.
Yeah. I think, it makes sense. I like that positioning there. I mean, VortiX going so greedy here with the trade. He might need to sort out a little bit of an issue with them going around the front of the base, though. It looks like they're now going around the back. But
just maybe create, like, I think if you create a small wall near that woodline at the front of your base, like, don't even full wall across. It should fix their pathing. But, you know, it's kind of an interesting thing I like to discuss people with. Like, let me know what your thoughts are on this. I think it is perplexing how often Chinese players do not build secondary TCs away from their base.
Well, I mean, it usually doesn't punish the Chinese as much to build the town center within your base. You've got imperial officials that are able to boost up your resources, effectively giving, a third extra resources in your base. So your villagers don't have to move out as fast as other civilizations do. And it's always a safer move to build your town center within your base.
That's true, but here's the counter thought. No civ can build an aggro TC quicker than the Chinese, right? So it's kind of funny when everyone else was building these TCs on deer, out on the secondary wood lines, whatever you choose. The Chinese will always keep condensed. Now, I know the logic is meant to be, I don't want to build defenses, but even when we see Chinese players in matchups against civs that aren't going to aggro, they still just choose to go for condensed TC formats, which, while it does have a safety advantage early on, it does mean that you exhaust safe resources much quicker than if you go for those aggro TCs.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. But either way here, Beastie, you know, he understands that he's in a very good position to go greedy here, considering how greedy VortiX has gone. And now he's going to be following that up with some horsemen and some spears.
And they're on the move.
They're not looking...
The horsemen are intercepting right now, Merlin.
They are. Sofa still being produced for VortiX. Sofa do trade a lot better up against horsemen, but Beastie's got a few spears mixed in there as well, and it's making it so hard for VortiX to deal with that.
The body blocks as well. This is the perfect amount of cavalry to actually shift the pathing. You saw what happened there. It happens again. The way it's going to work is if you actually get to surround the concave, then the caravan has to walk back on itself, keeping it in range long enough to kill. It's the worst thing possible for VortiX. Now, VortiX, things are getting worse. You know, it's usually not a good sign when a Marlin player has to build Donzos. You know, sometimes it works out, but we've seen quite frequently it's not an option they do out of choice. It's usually out of necessity.
Yeah. VortiX going quite heavy into archers now as well, trying to deal with the spears from Beastie. Horsemen are going to have to retreat here, though.
Yeah, he's forced VortiX to commit a lot there. Now he wants to try and open the other side, but VortiX, credit to him, he's aware of what's been happening here. He hasn't been neglecting it. A few archers will keep the spin from torching through. So now Beastie has to decide, do I try and penetrate nearer to his base? And if I do, what's the risk associated with that? Because if I go into that choke point, I might not be coming out again.
Mass Chukunu seems to be the call here for Beastie.
Or on the other side.
Barimba coming through for VortiX, though.
It's been spotted. Beastie, if he reacts, he could snipe a few villages and slow this down more. Instead, he's heading over to the archers. So VortiX will wipe the sweat from his brow and probably be somewhat happy with that. It's still going to cost him some traders, but could have been worse.
Barimba Garrison, not as good as it once was. The 20% discount on gold has now been reduced to 10%.
And that means you're going to need more traders to make up the smaller discount on gold. So kind of unfortunate for you that Beastie is beating the living crap out of your poor little ponies.
It looks very odd seeing the Barimba so small.
Yeah, it's... You know, I think it represents the nerf. Like, the devs like, no, it being bigger, like, chill. This is the reality of what this landmark is, okay? It's not godlike anymore. Man, this army is looking godlike, though. I mean, Beastie, sure, you see that tech up, but you got to be smiling. Like, how close he is to teching up himself. At the same time, he has a vastly larger military force to flex with. And the problem is because Beastie went for so many horsemen and Shukenu, VortiX can't quickly solve this problem with the Farimba itself.
Yeah, and he's just been losing so many traders as well. Behind this, Beastie's on 2 TC Song.
These horsemen, they're just being used as bodies, right? Just throw it at the problem. Be the solution. Spearmen as well. Like, everything is there. Every box is ticked. I don't really know what VortiX's comeback is at this rate.
Astronomical clock tower coming through for Beastie.
Oh, man, it feels like if VortiX just got a few Musafadi warriors out, or maybe some sort of unit like javelins or whatever to that southern TC, if he'd done something to kind of alleviate the greed of Beastie, this game would look better. Because if you check the south side of the map, Beastie is playing this perfectly. Even if he loses his army, he's drawn all attention north side to the trade, and he's actually playing Pocket Eco south side. This is a classic move that you can utilize against trading civs, because they always prioritize defending their own over punishing yours.
Beastie's army has been pretty much completely wiped out right there, but not going to be too much of an issue for him, now being in the castle age.
And
He's
this should
got
be...
the Barbican to defend as well.
Well, he's going to be going for more spears. He could opt to go into a few pass guard to be a nuisance. Like, they're pretty effective, better than the spearmen at chasing down the caravans. And it would force VortiX to now convert across to another unit type again.
Maybe this is where we see the Muso Fadi being used.
I think it has to be forced in this situation. Like that's what I'm saying. Like, Beastie, he could go pass guard, to force a transfer, like a transition rather by VortiX, one that he didn't want to make himself. Like if you look at his comp, he's very happy if the game just turns into this, and this is how he builds an army. So Beasty's goal should be to kind of make him uncomfortable, force him to now pivot into a new unit type.
Beasty, so far this game, has killed 11 workers. So that does include the trade. I think it's mainly just traders that he's killed.
Yeah.
Oh. Looking pretty decent there.
He wants to change that.
Yeah. Trying to push VortiX off the berries there.
So if he notices that VortiX is playing out of the base on the deer, which he might get suspicious of now that he's still the berries, VortiX could lose a lot of villagers. In fact, he still just has this problem. He never completed the wall in, so this will just keep happening. You know, horsemen are the quickest unit in this combat. VortiX probably needs a kind of go timing soon. The problem he's got is that Barbic on the front side is going to delay him unless he goes into Rams. And if I'm not mistaken, like VortiX still has not really given any true attention or worry to the second TC. He's never postured in a way that he's threatening it. And I think because he went for this trade, he never will.
Beasty's villagers are really, really exposed right now on a berry patch to the left side, but VortiX doesn't really care about that.
This is
at the moment he's pushing into Beasty's base right now. Nesta B on the back line.
Second Nesta Bs is the key detail here, though. Look, VortiX commits, trying to get on the first one. Second one to layer in. But is Beasty's line strong enough? He needs to get more troops out and fast. Those sofas are wrapping around and looking to snipe out the siege. Villagers are going to be pulled to repair, but the main army has been wiped out. With the second wave in, VortiX could easily dive past the Barbican.
Wow, what a fight right there for VortiX. This is exactly what he needs. Villagers going to be taken out here, trying to keep that nest to be alive. Not enough, though.
Oh, this
Sofa mass just looking so huge right here. And look at the reinforcements coming in as well. VortiX is not slowing down whatsoever.
That's it.
And with that, GG gets called.
He has to. You saw it, Beasty. He was panicking. Crossbows are coming out. No real reason to get them in small quantities like that. Palsguard were pumped, but he wouldn't get them out quick enough. VortiX's read on this was perfect. It looked a bit shaky, and it looked like he had an all-in timing, but he understood the Barbican should not phase him. A 25 damage hand cannon slit cannot stop an army of 40 plus. Beasty tried to go for this baited play with the 1-2 Nesta Bs to kind of layer him in, but the brilliant thing that VortiX done is he brought enough numbers to the fight to surround. There was never a clumping of units that gave great value to the Bs, and it allowed VortiX to come through and go straight for the jugular.
Wow. Beasty was floating a ton of resources at the end there. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I mean, he was in such a great position going into Castle Age, and he kind of threw away his army, which gave a perfect opportunity for VortiX to push into his base.
I mean, honestly, I think Beasty, it looked like he just didn't have enough production up, right? He felt kind of content. I think the big whoopsie that comes for him is when he was retreating away from the trade, he lost way too many units, and VortiX read it perfectly. You know, he understood Beasty. When he sent in this next line of horsemen to raid the trade, Beasty was feigning strength from a position of weakness. Right? Like, it's a classic one that Beasty likes to do. In this situation, when he feels behind, he'll try to pull you to the backside of his base. And credit where credit is due to VortiX. He did not fall for it at all. He understood how strong his timing was, and he chose to end the game at the most optimal timing. Great play by him. Keeps him in the upper bracket. Beasty fans, well, don't worry, you can breathe a sigh of relief. If you are a Beasty fan, he is still in this. It just means he's going to have to try again the next weekend from the lower bracket, where I believe he will be matching up again